everyone. Today we're going to focus more on the work we do when we're reading poetry. So as you're reading poetry, you use a skill called inferring. Inferring is using your background knowledge, what you already know based on your life and experiences you've had, and using evidence from the text, from the words that you read, to create or think about your own image, just like we did with stepping stones. I read the words, you use those words to create a picture in your head that answers, what is this poem about? Today we're going to do some more work with that. We'll first do a poem together, and then you're going to do a poem on your own, and you're going to write about what words helped you make your inference. So to do that, you're going to need this paper from your packet and something to write with. We'll use those at the end. First, let's think about what inferring is again. Here's a definition of inferring. Inferring is using your background knowledge and the evidence from the text to create your own idea or answer. The answer must make sense with the whole text. When we do this together today, we're going to follow a little plan. And that plan has us reading all of the words in the poem first. Don't just read one line. Poems, you need to know the whole thing before you can make sure you're inferring correctly. So read all of the words. Think about the meaning of those words. What picture do I get in my mind when I'm reading this? Do all of those words I just read support the image or idea? Sometimes you'll read one phrase and it will make you think of something. And so you're like, oh, this poem is about oranges. And then you read the next phrase and it doesn't match. So you have to make sure that all of the parts from the poem match with your inference. Finally, once you have that picture in your head and you think you know what the poem is about, go back and reread the whole poem and check, does each part match the words and make sense with your inference? Let's try it out together. Here's a poem, and our job is to figure out, I took one of the words out, and we're going to try to figure out what is that word that's missing. It's the same word twice in the poem. So when you see the poem, there's two blanks, and we're trying to figure out one word that fits in both of those spaces and makes sense with all the other clues. Here it is. A blank fell into my hand, a tiny fragile gem, a frosty crystal floweret with petals but no stem. I wondered at the beauty of its intricate design. I breathed, the blank vanished, but for moments it was mine. Noticing a lot of the things we've learned about poetry. There's some rhyming. There's definitely some line breaks that give it rhythm. There's even some alliteration with fragile, frosty, floweret. So they're using that same beginning sound. Let's focus in on the inferring now. Something fell into my hand. So what could fall into my hand? It's tiny. It's fragile, which means it's easily broken. It's like a gem. A gem is like a diamond or a ruby, some sort of sparkly crystal. Ooh, they use the word crystal there too. Frosty means kind of cold or frozen. And floweret makes me think of something that looks like a flower, but it says with petals but no stem. So maybe just the top part of the flower, no stem holding it up. I wondered at the beauty of its intricate design. Intricate means really fancy or detailed. I breathed, the blank vanished, but for moments it was mine. I'm going to breathe on my hand just so I can feel what that feels like, because it said it fell into my hand. What happens when I breathe on my hand? Ooh, that feels warm, doesn't it? So I'm wondering, what could this be about? So again, I'm thinking, what could this poem be about? It's tiny, it's fragile, it's like a crystal gem. I can hold it in my hand. It falls into my hand. It's got really detailed designs. When I breathe on it, it disappears or vanishes. Oh, I think I know. Do you know what it is? Let's say it together on 1, 2, 3. Snowflake! Did you agree with me? Yes. And when we read it again, all of those parts match. Let's put snowflake in there and test it out. A snowflake fell into my hand, a tiny fragile gem, a frosty crystal floweret with petals but no stem. Those seem to fit with a snowflake. I wondered at the beauty of its intricate design. I breathed, the snowflake vanished. But for moments, it was mine. Snowflakes are so detailed. Have you ever put one on, caught one on a black paper or a dark mitten and you've looked at it? You can see the tiny little details. Okay, now that we've learned how to infer, let's think about how we are going to infer with a poem of your own. So here we go. We're going to use your paper right here. Let's read it together and see if we can get some images in our mind. Remember, the first step in inferring is to read all of the words. I jiggled it, jaggled it, jerked it. I pushed and pulled and poked it. But as soon as I stopped and left it alone, this came out on its very own. We're going to try to figure out what is in that missing blank. First, let's think about the words in the poem. What do they mean? What's the meaning of those words? Let's get a picture in our head. I jiggled it, jaggled it, jerked it. I pushed and pulled and poked it. But as soon as I stopped and left it alone, this blank came out on its very own. So it's something that can be taken out or removed. What are you inferring this poem is about? We're going to support our answer with quotes from the text and our background. And I noticed a little mistake. I put a question mark at the end of that first sentence where you're filling in the blank. You can cross that out. It shouldn't be there. It should be a period. Okay, let's take a look at the paper and do this together. We'll think through it together and then you do the writing on your own. Okay, when I think about jiggling and jaggle and jerk, I pushed and pulled and poked it. But as soon as I stopped and left it alone, this blank came out on my very own. After reading the words, thinking about the meaning of those words, what picture did you get in your mind? Do all of the words we just read match that picture? We read the poem again and we checked to make sure those words made sense. So I'm inferring this poem is about blank. What word do you think is missing here? Write it on the line. Here's where you're going to add some evidence for your thinking. When I read blank, that reminds me of. So you're going to take words from the poem that helped you create the picture in your head, and you're going to write them down here. Let's try it out with the first poem about the snowflake. I'm inferring this poem is about a snowflake. When I read, I breathed, the snowflake vanished, that reminds me of how my warm breath makes snow melt. Then you're going to choose a different sentence and write about it. When I read a frosty crystal flowerette, that reminds me of how a snowflake looks like the petals of a flower. So you're going to go ahead and use that same idea as you write about this poem. What words from this poem remind you of something that helped create the image in your mind and inferred about the poem? I can't wait to see your writing. Remember to take a picture and send it to your teacher. Bye.